Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video. And the subject of today's video is a bit different than normal. I am doing a TV show video. I'm going to be talking about the show King of the Hill today. If you're not familiar, or if I haven't ever said it on the channel formally before, King of the Hill is my favorite animated show of all time for sure. It might be I would say it's my favorite comedy show of all time as far as like a sitcom. I would actually call it more of a sitcom than an animated show just because it is so grounded in reality, so close to real life, and how it um, portrays the different situations and episodes and characters. It's not really like Family Guy or The Simpsons, which are much more cartoonish. This is literally just like a sitcom if the characters were drawn rather than real actors. And there's a lot of reasons why I like the show. I have another video on the channel where I talk about my reasons for loving the show. If you're interested in that, check it out. Otherwise, I think today we will be focusing on my top 10 favorite characters of all time from the show. Without further ado, let's get on to the first one on screen here, which is John Redcorn. John Redcorn is just a guy who is in the show but doesn't really have any connections to anybody in the show. He obviously has a love affair with Nancy Gribble. He has the son Joseph, who Dale thinks is his, and everybody knows it's really John Redcorn's except for Dale, so that's kept a secret to the town. Um, John Redcorn isn't in a ton of episodes. He's in maybe like a couple every season, but he's in enough where he's like a steady presence throughout the show. And um, despite never having many episodes about himself, maybe like one a season, he still provides, I think, a good solid presence on the show, and never like a flashy comedic role, but just really subtle comedy, which I like a lot. Like he'll get in little comments here and there that'll be pretty funny, but it's never like some overt comedic gesture. It's just little quips that he has here and there about different little things or inconveniences to his life. They sometimes play up the aspect that he's a Native American and all his land has been taken, and some not in an inappropriate or way or anything like that, but just like he himself will say little funny things about himself being a Native American, being surrounded by this kind of white hick town with a bunch of um, not redneck people, but pretty close to redneck people, um, or at least perceived rednecks. But yeah, he's a really funny character to me. Next, I have Cotton Hill, who's very outlandish and loud, and really actually probably the closest thing we have to a villain on King of the Hill. You know, you have another character, Khan, who is by some considered a villain on the show, but I would say Cotton is a pretty much uh, the the biggest villain though, in that unlike Khan, he has no redeeming qualities really. They actually are voiced by the same voice actor. If you didn't know that, that's a fun fact. Cotton and Khan voiced by the same guy. Um, but Cotton's just really nasty. But for some reason, I do get some kicks out of him. He's probably in like 2 episodes a season, I'd say. So in total, that's like, about 25. Um, but he's a solid character who gets quite a bit of. Whenever he's in an episode, it's basically about him. So for that reason, even though he's not in a ton, he actually is the focus of quite a few episodes. And his dynamic with Hank and with Bobby are both pretty interesting. So for that reason, I like having him on the show. And ultimately, even though he's pretty much a jerk throughout the entire course of the series, there are some moments where he has a few redeeming moments on the show, and those are like worth the payoff of him being a terrible guy for the rest of the show. Next, I have Luanne, who is probably the dumbest character on the show, but there's some comedy in her stupidity, and just things that she gets incorrect that she doesn't realize even necessarily. She is very slow again, as I say. Honestly, even though she can get annoying at some points, I really love Brittany Murphy's voice acting for her, and I think her voice really perfectly captures Luann's spirit really, really well. And for that reason, that's something else I like about Luann. Also, she again even though she isn't in a ton of episodes necessarily, the ones that she's in, she's oftentimes the focus of. So for that reason, even though she isn't in as many episodes as the core threesome family or the buddies of Hank, she is still the focus of quite a few episodes, so we get to know her pretty well, and they actually give her a good arc. She starts out like a recent high school grad with no career prospects and like living in the Hills Den. She matures to go to cosmetic school or hairdressing school. And then she goes on to community college. Then she goes back to cosmetics slash hairdressing school and graduates. Gets to be a hair cutter at a few different shops. She eventually moves out of the Hills house. She buys a house of her own. She gets married. She has a kid. She really matures over the course of the show, which is something that not all the characters got. So I think the fact that she did was pretty cool. Next, I have Dale Gribble. We're getting higher here. I'd say Dale is kind of like the first character that you would call like a main character on the show that I have on this list. The ones that I've previously had on here, I would say are more supporting characters. Dale is definitely like probably after the Hill family, Dale might have the most lines in the series, I would guess. Um, and a lot of people, he would be like their number two or number one. To me, Dale is just grating sometimes, and I really don't find much humor in the whole conspiracy theory angle that he brings to the show. Like, a big character point of his is that he believes in conspiracy theories, like that JFK never got shot, that like Area 51 houses aliens, so on and so forth. I never really dig that humor, so I never connect with him super well, and episodes that are focused on him are generally some of my least favorite episodes. I mean, they're still good. I still enjoy them, but just I don't enjoy them as much as others. But don't get me wrong, he is one of the main characters. He still has some great comedic beats. Um, the stuff about him, Nancy, John Redcorn, all of that stuff is hilarious. What I think my favorite Dale episode, he starts working at like just a manufacturing company, and he gets a promotion where his job becomes just to fire other people, which he thinks is easy because he's used to being an exterminator where he's killing living things, so he thinks it's a step down just to be only firing people, so he has no problem with it. It's the only episode where for the full episode you see Dale without his hat and without his sunglasses. It's very different, but it's a really good Dale episode. Next, I have Bill, who gets a similar amount of attention as Dale, and they're kind of the dynamic duo of idiocy on the show, as far as they're always coming up with stupid schemes and carrying them out, and always having foolish plans and really playing off of each other well in that way. A lot of people don't like Bill because they find him annoying and complaining a lot, but I think in general, I find the episodes that focus on him a bit more interesting than the ones that focus on Dale, just because of the ridiculousness of Dale's that seem too far fetched for a show that seems really grounded in reality. Whereas Bill, I feel like there's a dime a dozen people who go through everything that Bill goes through. Whereas what Dale does seems like really far fetched sometimes to me. Bill can get a little bit annoying when he's just always like complaining about his life and about his divorce, but uh, I just generally am more interested in the episodes about him for some reason. Just maybe I relate more to him because he's more. Dale's probably the most cartoonish character on the show, I guess you'd say, whereas Bill seems more like a real person. Next, I have Khan, who isn't one of the main four dudes, but he is in a lot of episodes. He's Hank's next door neighbor. He, to me, gets tons of great comedic lines, tons of great focal point episodes where he is the star of the episode. Um, I think he works best as like a great frenemy on the show, which is I think a dynamic that's really good to have, and it's very realistic to life for a lot of people. He is that neighbor that's really annoying, but you still invite him to the family picnic and to the neighborhood events and stuff like that, and they're still kind of like friendly with you when you're hanging out together, but you sort of have a rivalry with too. I think that's real. That's really relatable to real life for probably a lot of people. Um, and the episodes that solely focus on him are usually pretty spot on because they can play off a lot of good dynamics about like he has a lot of good character qualities about feeling like insecure in his state in life and he wants to achieve really high aspirations and he's always striving for that but not quite achieving what he wants to, and I think that general premise for him creates a lot of good situations in different episodes focused on him. At 4, I have Boomhauer. people are going to think this is really high for a character that barely does anything throughout the course of the show and technically only has 2 episodes throughout the entire 13 season, something like 250 episodes. He only has 2 episodes that are actually technically about him. Uh, but let me say this. The 2 episodes that are actually about Boomhauer are 2 phenomenal episodes. Episode 1 of season 8, Patch Boomhauer, where his brother comes to town, voiced by Brad Pitt. That is probably the best. I want to say that's the maybe the best episode of that season. It's really cool, and there's one episode. It's called "A Firefighting We Will Go," season 3. It's the one episode where you hear what Boomhauer would sound like if he talked normal like everyone else, and that's a really cool moment. And I think Boomhauer is just a really steady presence throughout the series where he's never really the focal point, but he's always kind of like the friend tagging along and kind of like providing backup for somebody. And, despite him very rarely actually speaking coherently, he actually is pretty wise and sage. That's kind of what his character is in the show, the sage, I guess you'd say. But I get a really big kick out of him. Next at number 3, I've got Peggy, probably the most annoying of the main 3 hills. I found this picture of her, which I thought was hilarious from the episode where it's her and Hank's anniversary, and they don't really have any fun plans, so they just end up getting drunk at home. Peggy is that kind of person that we've all run into, a really annoying know-it-all who is the kind of person who's smart, but not nearly as smart as she thinks she is, so she just gets on your nerves all the time. She can be really grating, but it doesn't come from a bad place. It comes from just a place of not really being super self-aware, um, which I think at times can be as annoying as it can be endearing, though. So I got a soft spot for Peggy, even though she can be annoying. Next, at number 2, Bobby Hill. Bobby is, between him, Hank, and Peggy, he's one of the main characters, and I would say arguably the second main character. Um, Bobby, obviously, throughout the course of the series, gets a ton of main episodes about him. Later on in the series, he gets a lot more that are focused on just like the dynamic between him and his friend group at middle school. Those episodes don't really do it for me, honestly. The best episodes about Bobby are actually the ones that are between the interplay between him and Hank, and how Bobby's kind of this disappointing son to Hank, but they try and form a relationship nonetheless. And Bobby's really unathletic and doesn't have any of the same interests as Hank, but they still try and forge through it and still try to relate to each other despite that. To me, that's the best dynamic of any 2 characters on the show, and Bobby's obviously one half of that dynamic duo, and besides that, has a lot of great one-liners. Um, so I got Bobby at number 2. And at number 1, of course, it had to be Hank. I mean, this is the main character of the show. He's given the most episodes about him. And the great thing about Hank that I think is underrated, in episodes that aren't about him, that maybe are about, Dale, Bill, Peggy, Bobby, Con, he is still a phenomenal supporting character in any. Whenever he's a supporting character in an episode, he basically is the best supporting character. Mike Judge made this character so well written that yes, his main episodes where they're about him are really good, but when he is just like the B plot in an episode, that's maybe when Hank is his funniest. When he just does something little silly and on the side for 90 seconds, then you cut away, then 8 minutes you cut back to Hank doing something silly for another 90 seconds, or just like stupid or foolish or whatever the B plot is. That's when I think Hank might be his funniest. As a main character, of course, the kind of main comedic gist of the show is a really mild mannered dude being put in situations that basically like test his patience and test his virtues, and they just do this perfectly. And Hank, Hank's the dude. He's the main character, and the show portrays everything about him really well. So that's my list, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you tune into some more videos, and I will see you next time. Bye.